Hi, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marissa Kozlov. Welcome to today's eMarketer Tech Talk webinar, where we host guest speakers from all areas of media, ad tech, and MarTech. Today's topic will discuss how marketers can measure the long-term value of their brand with the impact of their short-term marketing investments. But before we get to this great content today, I'd like to introduce you to my two guests. First, we have Katie Daly, Senior Consultant at Neustar. Katie, nice to see you.
Hi, thanks, Marissa. Happy to be here.
And we also have Henry Tam, Senior Vice President of Global Sales and Partnerships at Bera. Hi, Henry.
Hi, Marissa. Nice to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have both of you here, and we're also excited to have all of you with us today from our audience. Please know that we will be doing a live Q&A with Katie and Henry in the second part of today's webinar. We'd love to hear from you, so please keep those questions coming. I will do my best to get to as many as possible, but please ask any questions that you have on your mind during today's presentation. I can't wait to get started. Katie, over to you.
Great, thanks, Marissa. So we're here today to discuss how marketers can manage both short-term and long-term objectives as it relates to their marketing investment. B2C marketers know that long-term marketing goals like brand health and sustainable revenue growth are important, but they too often focus more on short-term goals like sales conversions. At Neustar, we have built a vast marketing analytics practice, helping our clients optimize their marketing campaigns, and primarily those optimizations center around sales performance or return on ad spend. But it's important to also consider longer-term objectives that aid in building brand equity. And we are seeing more and more brands wake up to the possibility of optimizing for both the short and the long term. Accurately capturing the short-term impacts of marketing on sales is Neustar's bread and butter. Short-term models capture up to a year of marketing effects, and results are nearly immediately actionable. However, measuring the long-term impacts of marketing requires a unique approach. Brand equity is a very slow-moving, long-term process with extremely diffuse marketing impacts in the short term. Note that it is very rare for an advertising campaign to have an impact on sales for even a year, yet it can generate a warm feeling for the brand that lasts for years. This kind of brand equity is an extremely important asset, but it is a long-term process of 10 to 20 years or more. Characteristically, it is very slow to lift, but can deteriorate quickly under extreme circumstances. So why is brand equity so important? Strong brand equity keeps the brand top of mind for consumers. It provides valuable revenue protection with lower response to price. Typically, Neustar focuses on brand health, which is defined theoretically as the trend of brand equity as a specialized indirect model, which is a medium-term 2 to 5 year process. Through our brand health indirect models, we capture the longer and slower moving marketing and other drivers' impacts through brand building. And through our system of models, we capture the cumulative short and medium run impact on sales. But knowing the impact of marketing isn't enough. You also need to understand how specific channels perform in order to make smarter decisions about where to place that next dollar. Having a comprehensive view across channels like TV, Facebook, email, and print is essential for a data-driven marketing program. Marketers need to know the truth about how their marketing is performing and leverage metrics that really matter to the business to know if what you spent is generating the expected return. Returns can come in many forms. Sales is the most obvious one, but many marketers want to know if their investments are improving brand health, driving customer retention, and ultimately delivering ROI. Optimizing for sales alone can undercredit the impact of brand marketing. Brand campaigns have been effective drivers of brand health across our clients, while some campaigns can actually decay the brand. We typically see promotional marketing having a smaller impact on brand health than on sales. Given these differences, it's important to have this holistic view when optimizing your marketing budget so you understand the full impact of the different marketing on both short and longer term KPIs. In terms of what we typically see for marketing's contribution to brand health, it is usually lower than marketing's contribution to sales, and has an inverse relationship with maturity of the brand. That is, an established brand with stable sales can be more difficult for marketing to move the needle on than a rapidly growing brand. When looking at brand metrics, there are many different options to consider, depending on the consistency and length of the data. And we've had many requests from clients to capture this in our models. If less than 4 years of survey data is available, brand value and brand appeal are potential approaches. With brand value as a variable in the sales model, we can establish the value of the brand in driving sales. Brand appeal takes a more market share approach, measuring marketing's impact on driving brand favorability relative to competitors. When 10 or more years of consistent data is available, we can model brand equity as a direct outcome, quantifying brand marketing power and other factors on brand equity. When we have 4 to 5 years of data, we see how brand equity is trending. This is what we call brand health and takes into account consumers' opinion of the brand and how marketing efforts are impacting that. Brand health is often the preferred choice, and we find that BERA is best in class in providing the data we need for MMM optimizations. And with that, I'll hand it to Henry.
Thank you so much, Katie. Nice to be here. One of the most exciting things about the partnership between BERA and Neustar is the ability to provide this connection between brand health, brand equity, we call it brand love, to business results. And it's very timely. I was recently invited by Jim Stengel, the former global CMO of Procter & Gamble, to speak at a Cannes event in June to approximately about 90 CMOs and up-and-coming CMOs. And the question I posed to them was, how many of you believe that brand love impacts business results? About 90% of all of those participants raised their hands. But when asked, how do you define brand love and can you connect it to business results, a much smaller portion raised their hands. And it's not the CMO's fault. This is what CMOs want to do. They want to connect their brand investments to business results. But legacy brand management tools just haven't been there. They've oftentimes been looking at lagging indicators, working with old data and backward-looking results. So BERA was formed 7 years ago, really to answer 2 questions. Number 1, how do brands grow? And number 2, how does brand impact business results? And through an always-on syndicated survey technology and predictive analytics, we're able to prove with our partners like Neustar that brand equity actually matters and can be tied directly to grow sales or increase loyalty and customer engagement. But what's equally exciting about the BERA platform is the ability to look at the drivers of brand health. Whether they're the purpose drivers, emotional drivers, functional drivers, or experiential drivers, all of these attributes impact brand equity. And this is what our platform really does, is really making that connection between the drivers of brand equity and how brand equity impacts business results. Now, in order to do this, you need a large continuous data set and you need historical data in order to prove causality. And BERA's been around since 2013. Our methodology involves taking a 15-minute mobile-first online survey. We measure over 4,000 brands across 200 sectors. We're available in 87 countries, and we have 100+ metrics that we're capturing in these surveys. And these metrics are not just that brand equity piece that we talked about, that brand love piece that we talked about, but all the drivers, all the consumers' perceptions of those drivers. Those drivers consist of consumers' perceptions of your 5 Ps, for example, because marketing is only one piece of brand building, right? There's also your product, your distribution, your customer service. All of those perceptions impact your brand. We also capture the emotional qualities of your brand. So we capture over 42 consumer perceptions of your brand, whether your brand is sincere, exciting, competent. All of those things are being captured by the platform, as well as purpose. Your purpose of the brand, your brand's reason for being. And this is not just about social responsibility, but whether your product has clarity or has a humanitarian aspect to it, all of these things impact your brand equity. And we're doing this on a massive scale. We're doing about 25,000 surveys per week alone in the United States. Besides having a large data set and 100 plus metrics, the other thing that makes Bera unique is our norms. Brand equity is not conceived of in a vacuum. We're looking at brands competing with all brands to help you understand your relative position inside and outside of category. And these norms are interesting not only for themselves, but if you put it in the framework of love, you could be, if you look at this chart here, you could be a brand on the left-hand side of the curve where you're at the new and dating phase. You could be a brand at love, or you could be on the right-hand side of the curve, looking at boredom and divorce. And these are really interesting for three reasons. Number one, you can compare your brand inside and outside the category. Credit card companies may not only want to look at themselves within category, but maybe look outside of their category to companies like PayPal and Venmo, and that's very easy to do with our framework. Strategically, where you are on the curve can also impact what your brand strategy should be. If you're on the left-hand side of this spectrum, it may be a challenge of scale. Whereas if you're on the right-hand side of the curve, it's a challenge of revitalization. And finally, what the platform allows you to do, for example, if you were Southwest Airlines, for example, will allow you to understand what it takes to get up that curve. Because we've tied brand equity to business results through our partnerships with Newstar and other MMM companies, the question that the platform answers is, what does a 1-point value of Southwest Airlines mean when they go up the curve? And what do they need to do to drive that value up the curve through brand positioning and levers they can pull internally? So let's get to a case study right now. We're using the McDonald's case study here to showcase the causality of our data. And we've done this for hundreds of clients. And right now what you're seeing is McDonald's same restaurant sales growth over about a 2.5-year period. And what we're doing now is actually placing Bera's score on top of the McDonald's sales growth. And what you're going to see is a high level of correlation when we look at concurrent sales, right? We're looking at about a 0.65 correlation there. But what's most interesting is when I pull those results backwards, when I pull the results, the Bera results back by about 90 days, you're seeing an even greater explanatory power between Bera brand results and actual business results, meaning that brand results can be causal for business results. And that's what's one of the interesting things about our relationship with Newstar is that taking this causality and putting it in the context of marketing mix modeling allows our clients to really understand the different impacts of not only brand in the short term, but also the long term. And with that, I'll turn it back to Katie.
Great. So in this next section, we'll go over a case study showing how we measure brand impact in practice. Bera was a key data source for this analysis. First, we collected 5 years of data from Bera and then tested multiple brand metrics for correlation to sales. Familiarity was selected as the KPI because it had the highest correlation with sales trend. Once metrics were selected, we applied a phased approach to modeling. In phase 1, we built the brand model as a standalone. In phase 2, the brand model will be linked with the sales model system as an indirect outcome. Our phase 1 analysis focused on the impact of each media channel on brand familiarity. The graph shows all the media channels we measured, the goal being to identify which channels drove the greatest familiarity with the brand and compare that across the past 2 years. In this instance, TV is unusually low because the client does less brand building in their creative. Our recommendation was to execute more brand messaging and more consistency in their TV creative. We find this will often lead to higher contribution for this channel. Sponsorship and consistently executed channels like paid search and affiliates topped high in the results. Typically, sponsorships, like those that one might see for big sporting events or concerts, fall lower when optimizing for short-term sales alone, partly due to high costs. But this provided the evidence the team needed to continue investing in these large events and partnerships to deliver longer-term brand health. Once we identified which media channels were driving the greatest brand familiarity, we compared that with the contribution that each channel had to short-term sales. Sponsorships and emails both contribute significantly to sales, with paid social, search, and TV close behind. Search is a strong driver for both. Optimizing for either KPI would recommend increases for search. While sponsorship is strong for delivering both sales and brand health, TV has a lower contribution on familiarity than on sales, suggesting that brand messages could help build that up over time. Also, email delivered very little in terms of brand health and suggests that it may be a key channel for bottom funnel, last touch engagement. To summarize, our key findings were: the client should continue to invest in large-scale partnerships and events. They should incorporate more consistent, frequent brand messaging in their TV creative. And down funnel channels should have a strong call to action, like flash promotions, to drive short-term sales. With that, we're looking forward to seeing what questions the audience have, and I'll hand it over to Marissa.
Well, thank you so much. What a fantastic presentation from both of you. It was really good to hear all of that data on really the long-term value of a brand and how it can impact business results. Love the case studies, love the poll questions. Great job to both of you. So let's get to those questions, Katie, as you asked for. The first one comes from Sharon in Philadelphia. How many Neustar clients are optimizing for brand outcomes today? How does a brand get started? Katie, what do you think?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So all of our clients are essentially optimizing for ROI and sales, and more clients are becoming interested in optimizing for longer term metrics like brand health. The pandemic accelerated this, with more retailers shifting from promotional store traffic driving messages to brand messaging, such as "we're here for you" or curbside pickup capabilities. So this is really a growing interest and a very relevant topic about optimizing for the longer term metrics such as brand health.
All right, great to hear that on how to get started. Thank you. The next question comes from Vanessa in Salem, Massachusetts. When looking at my real-time insights, how far back do I need to go? How much history does BERA typically have to work with? Henry, that one is for you.
All right, thanks, Marissa. Typically, marketing mix models require about, at minimum, 3 years of historical data to do any type of time series analysis. At BERA, we have about 4 to 5 years of weekly historical data on all of the brands that we track.
Okay, good to hear about that history. Thanks. Bobby in Sacramento asks, why should a brand optimize for brand equity metrics instead of optimizing creative messaging on a particular campaign? Katie, would you like to take that?
Sure, another great question. Well, many of our clients are optimizing their marketing tactics with us, and that includes things like region, campaign, publisher, platform, creative, and even down to a placement level. Creative optimizations often do just that, help a marketer determine which creative is driving more short-term sales impact to help guide where they should place their dollars for the greatest bang for their buck. Optimizing for brand impact helps to identify the longer-term impact of those investments and ensure that you're driving both the short-term outcomes you need and the longer-term outcomes for brand health. As is shown in the case study we highlighted today, this can sometimes bring to light creative messaging optimizations. If we find, for example, a particular channel that is meant to be driving upper funnel brand awareness isn't doing its job, then we might make suggestions about improvements to creative messaging as well.
All right, thank you. And Bobby, don't forget that you will be getting an email with the playback of today's webinar, so you can go back and look at that case study that Katie just mentioned. We are going to take one more question, and that comes from Hayden in the Bronx here in New York. Katie, he asks, do you find that certain channels tend to drive more brand impacts versus others?
Great, thanks for the question. Well, we do find that there are some channels that brands tend to leverage more for upper funnel brand messaging, like TV or sponsorships, while other channels are geared more towards that specific call to action, like email or paid search. But these aren't hard and fast rules, and we have seen things change with changes to the way we interact with media and changes in shopping behaviors. For example, with the growth of both connected TV and online shopping, we may find a stronger call to action in TV messaging to drive traffic to the brand site where a purchase might be made. So it's really evolving.
All right. Well, thank you both so much, Katie, Henry. What a great presentation. It was so wonderful to be with both of you today. And of course, thanks for answering all of the questions from our audience. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Marissa. Happy to be there.
So before we wrap up, let me just take a moment to tell you what's happening across eMarketer's media channels. You can register for live analyst and tech talk webinars at emarketer.com/webinars. On the audio side, don't forget to tune in to Behind the Numbers, our daily podcast. And of course, please do subscribe to our various newsletters. Keep an eye on your email. You will be getting a link to today's recording. Feel free to share that with your colleagues. Thanks again to all of you for your time. And thanks to Katie, Henry, and the entire team at Newstar. We'll see you all on the next Tech Talk. But until then, be healthy, be safe. Please take care of each other. We'll see you soon.
From the other